Britain's economy should be booming. We have world-class manufacturers with great export potential. We have fantastic historical sites to bring in lots of tourists. And we have talented entrepreneurs who want to set up lots of businesses. I'm going to lay out a vision of prosperity for the UK. Welcome to Booming Britain. The UK is a poor country if we exclude London. So we desperately need a strategy to grow the economy and create jobs outside of London. Create manufacturing jobs by boosting exports for small and medium-sized manufacturers. Create jobs in hospitality and leisure by abolishing air passenger duty at select airports to boost tourism. And create high-skilled jobs by offering commercially successful multimillionaires a reduced level of capital gains tax when they sell their foreign assets and invest in a business venture that creates jobs outside of London. By creating jobs across many sectors, you can then cut taxes, such as cutting VAT to 15%. This then helps further businesses. Cutting VAT also alleviates the cost of living crisis on many households. By having a clear economic growth strategy, you then create a circle of prosperity. UK SMEs manufacture fantastic construction equipment. However, the government department UK Export Finance doesn't do enough to help small and medium-sized manufacturers export. UK Export Finance only back loans based on the past performance of foreign buyers. They don't take future cash flows into consideration. This means if a foreign buyer won a huge new viable government contract that would increase their turnover a lot, UK Export Finance wouldn't back a loan for this project, and so UK SMEs might miss out on considerable export orders. To help boost exports for SMEs, either UK Export Finance needs to start backing loans based on future cash flows for contractors, or we use foreign aid money in the form of loans to big contractors carrying out infrastructure projects who are then forced to spend 50% of the loan with UK manufacturers. The UK should be targeting contractors doing major government infrastructure projects in Africa. Lend in foreign currency in as many cases as possible, so if there's any problem repaying the loan, the foreign government just needs to print more money. This is a vastly superior offer to what the Chinese typically offer the Africans, where they ask for some natural resource like a lithium mine or a bauxite mine as a loan guarantee. The Chinese also bring in a lot of their own labour to do these infrastructure projects. The British offer to the African nations would be much more lucrative than what the Chinese are offering. The British offer would be financially stronger in helping the Africans get the infrastructure they need to prosper. We'd also let them use predominantly their own labour for the project. However, what we could do is, say if a project was to build affordable housing or a hospital, we could offer self-employed UK-based contractors 3 or 4 months' work to go over and work on these projects. Take a UK flooring company or a scaffolding company whose work is seasonal. We should be offering these companies to be able to go over to Africa for 3 or 4 months during a quiet stage and then earn money. And we then actually have a government policy which shows sympathy towards the self-employed by trying to help them eliminate the seasonality of their work. This export boost would solve some of the disadvantages caused by Brexit and leaving the single market. Since 2019, goods exports to the EU have fallen 18%, but they've also fallen 14% to non-EU countries. So this in general boosts our exports and makes up for that shortfall that the UK has suffered since 2019. One way to attract more tourists into the UK would be by abolishing air passenger duty. Air passenger duty is a tax charged on all flights leaving the UK. Not only does air passenger duty increase the price of flying out of the UK, it also discourages low-cost airlines from putting in routes into the UK. Airports whose routes predominantly just take British people abroad and then back again are getting £15 in tax revenue from Brits who then spend thousands of pounds abroad. By abolishing APD, we should look at foregoing this tax revenue and getting the airlines to install new routes that are bringing lots of foreigners into the country and spending thousands of pounds with British businesses. And Ryanair are happy to do this.
We have 340 aircraft on order, and here's the prize we've offered to Rachel Reeves. We deliver about 60 million passengers a year to the UK. Within 5 years, we could grow that by 50% to 90 million passengers. And all she has to do is abolish APD. Scrapping APD would deliver growth not just into London, but across the regions of the UK. And it would be immediate. It would be this summer, it would be next winter, it would be the summer after. The airlines would respond by putting massive amount of incremental capacity into existing airports.
We should abolish air passenger duty at select airports like Birmingham, Newquay, Glasgow and Bournemouth. Then get the airlines to bring in new routes, have strong marketing campaigns and bring in as many tourists as possible to these areas. People walking through airports in continental Europe should be seeing big adverts promoting cheap flights to Birmingham. Now on those posters, they should of course be seeing historical sites such as Warwick Castle and Stratford-upon-Avon, but those posters should also be promoting small businesses in the nearby area, such as really nice pubs in nearby Leamington Spa, where people can enjoy the great British pub culture when they come to our country. We should also be promoting local leisure venues such as exotic spas, where people can go for luxurious treatments, relax and enjoy themselves after all their strenuous sightseeing and strenuous visits to the pub. So we have a national policy promoting small businesses on the international stage. The same could be done for Glasgow Airport, promoting cheap flights and a visit to Loch Lomond, Clydeside Distillery, and also promoting local restaurants, bars and hotels. Abolishing air passenger duty at airports would create extra jobs for airport support staff, boost business for local hospitality and leisure businesses as well as their local supply chains. To create high-skilled jobs in other sectors, we need to tap into the expertise of successful entrepreneurs. We should offer successful entrepreneurs a reduced level of capital gains tax when they sell their foreign assets and invest in a business venture that creates high-skilled, high-paid jobs outside of London. We're motivating these multimillionaires to liquidate their foreign assets and create wealth in the UK. This is hugely more beneficial than getting foreign companies to invest into the UK, set up a UK entity, but then afterwards repatriate profits abroad. In order for this growth strategy to work, it has to be accompanied by certain policies. Firstly, you cut the income tax rate from 20% to 10% for earnings between £12,570 and £25,000. This would incentivise people to take up a lot of the manufacturing and hospitality jobs that this growth plan creates. The income tax system needs to move to a much more gradually progressive system, and cutting this rate from 20% to 10% on those first £12,500 worth of earnings would be the first step of many to take in restructuring the income tax system. You've got to make it less appealing to live on benefits. Therefore, all people claiming benefits who are physically able to work need to be put to work doing some form of community service like litter picking. The amount of PIP claims has increased from 2 million to 3.4 million in the last 5 years, and 70% of this increase is due to invisible illnesses. Only 16% of people claiming PIP actually work. So there are lots of people with invisible illnesses not working at all. By getting these people working, doing community service, you give them a sense of purpose, you motivate them, you get them outdoors, and they can choose whether or not they work with people because they need a community, or they work in isolation because they say they can't work because they don't like being around other people. You need to cut the effective marginal tax rate for earnings between £100,000 and £125,400. Once people start earning over £100,000, they are taxed at an effective marginal tax rate of 62%. This is because they lose their personal allowance, and this level for losing your personal allowance has been frozen since 2010. This means that these people have had an effective tax increase every year for the last 15 years. This has motivated people to keep doing the same job but restructure and move abroad to places such as Cyprus, the United Arab Emirates, Portugal, Italy, Malta, the Isle of Man. This is an example of a perpetual tax rise that leads to losing tax revenue because these people are highly skilled and mobile and move abroad. Of course, because this affects high earners, there's very little sympathy to cut this tax in the public eye. It's not a case of sympathy, but one of common sense. These high earners are part of the top 10% who contribute 60% of income tax revenue. So we need to encourage these people to stay, and then when we create new highly skilled jobs, we also need people to take them up and then want to stay and not be disincentivized. This economic growth strategy solves a lot of the UK's problems. Brexit, for example. The huge increase in exports of industrial goods, coupled by the increase in sales from the food and drink sector, who comprise some of the supply chain of the hospitality sector, would basically make up for a huge amount of exports lost since leaving the single market. There'd be a reduction in youth unemployment. The UK has a terrible level of youth unemployment, but the hospitality sector employs a lot of young people. We're not talking about saving the hospitality sector, we're talking about giving it a serious boost due to the boost in tourism and resulting cut in VAT to 15%. This economic growth strategy would help to pay off our national debt. By creating a lot of jobs, you're going to be boosting the tax revenue received so you can start paying off the national debt and also then start spending money on some much needed things such as policing and defence. Cutting VAT and cutting fuel duty has deflationary effects, and 30% of the UK's national debt is index linked, i.e. linked to inflation. So if you come up with a fiscal policy that curbs inflation, you're probably also going to be paying a lower level of interest on some of the national debt. The country's infrastructure projects should be linked to this economic growth strategy. Port facilities might need to be upgraded in order to cope with the increase in exports of industrial products. And if you're getting tourists to new areas, then certain road infrastructure might need to be upgraded, such as in Cornwall. It's also worth noting that some tourists going to these areas might also want to go to London. Therefore, there should be quick train connections from places like Bournemouth to London, and the huge win would be if tourists flew in via Bournemouth to enjoy 2 or 3 days on the beaches and some other things, and then went to London afterwards. Then you'd abolish air passenger duty, boost business and tourism outside of London, but have them flying home via London, and the London airports are still charging air passenger duty, so you'd still get the tax from them. We'd be restoring national pride and aspiration by increasing the export of industrial products and beating China in Africa, where they've been historically strong. We'd be reversing the narrative that we're losing our industry and it's all going to China. The UK government still controls fiscal policy, so all of this could be implemented immediately and have a very, very strong effect within the next 2 years. My economic growth plan is also aspirational and lays out a clear path to prosperity for the majority of people in the United Kingdom.